Hi, I'm Dr. Sean Oakes, and I want to speak with you a little bit here about the retreat that's coming up April 1st through 5th, 2020, down at Camp Double Bear in the Santa Cruz Mountains. This will be the third time that we are returning to Camp Double Bear, and it may be the last simply because we're outgrowing the space a little bit, but it's a beautiful place to practice. And I want to describe a little bit the kind of practice that we do on these retreats because it's a little different from some other retreat structures that you may be used to. As many of you know, I come primarily from the insight meditation tradition, and in that tradition, we most commonly use a retreat structure that is a modified version of a structure for intensive lay meditation practice, mostly inherited from the Burmese. The Burmese Buddhist community, the monastic community, realized in the early 20th century that one of the effects of British colonial power would be the diminishment of the power of the monastic sangha and potentially the loss of some of the heart of Buddhist practice in Burma. And so among many interventions that were developed to respond to this potential loss, the opening of really the heart of contemplative Buddhist practice, meditation practices in the Theravada to lay people, non-monastics, was really emphasized. And by the late 20th century, movements like Goenka's Vipassana movement were global phenomena, and many of you may have done those retreats, very intensive meditation retreats, hour-long sittings back-to-back through the whole day for 10 days. And other styles of retreat, including the style of retreat that came to be taught by and associated with the school of Burmese practice founded by Mahasi Sayadaw and really spread throughout the world by his student U Pandita and others, including my own Burmese teacher, Sayadaw U Janaka, or Chemye Sayadaw. And in this style of retreat, sitting meditation periods are alternated with walking meditation periods in a day-long schedule that emphasizes continuity of attention and uses the practice of noting and slow movement to generate this kind of continual mindfulness. The heart of all of the various ways of doing intensive retreat in the Theravada systems and throughout the insight meditation system is that meditation and insight develop most fully and quickly when a very particular quality is cultivated, and that quality is continuity. So the purpose of any retreat structure in this understanding is to make a skillful container in which the practitioner can maintain or build or develop a kind of unbroken mindfulness throughout the whole day. So in that sense, it doesn't so much matter how much sitting, how much walking, what kind of formal eating there is in the schedule, though all of those things can vary depending on what one wants to emphasize, what kind of practice you want to be doing. But the core of the retreat schedule should be continuity. And so over 20 years of sitting and assisting and teaching a bit those classic insight meditation retreats, fully silent, sitting, walking, meal, sitting, walking, meal, Dharma talk, sitting, walking, go to sleep, wake up, do it all again. After 20 years or so of doing those retreats, and I love them, a few developments have been arising that I bring into the retreat structure that I do in these smaller, more experimental gatherings. One of these is an outgrowth of working in trauma resolution and the growth of the beautiful system of understanding the nervous system known as the Polyvagal Theory. And working with the nervous system points to a couple of things. Most prominently in this case, the centrality of social engagement and ventral, or like facial and social connection with others as the heart of what helps people as mammals, and particularly frontally oriented bipedal mammals as we are, to feel safe, to feel like we can relax, to give the message to the unconscious but pervasive activity of the autonomic nervous system to keep us safe, that it can let down. So the self-protective impulses of fight and flight deactivate through the musculature, and the survival instinct of freeze or collapse gets to thaw and come through mobilization into a more grounded or embodied, integrated sense of presence. All of that requires the feeling of safety to really unfold. This is at the heart of the polyvagal work of Dr. Stephen Porges. So some of what the Insight Meditation community and many other contemplative communities have been realizing in the past decade is that the classical retreat structure of entirely silence, including what we call like noble silence, so no eye contact, no physical contact certainly, and no words with other participants or students. While that structure is exquisitely set up to support deep meditative concentration, it's not very well set up to support healing from trauma and even settling the nervous system in a way that requires safety for many of us who have been wounded. And at this point, I think that's nearly everyone in this culture. And so not all meditation retreat schedules or structures are fully silent. I started my practice in Zen, which is not fully silent, and there's more to be said about the difference between, for instance, like the Zen Sesshin structure and the Insight Meditation retreat structure. But one of the things that Sesshin structure can contain is more work and more social engagement, which makes the nervous system a different creature on those retreats than on a fully kind of internally oriented, non-socially oriented structure. So one innovation that I now do in this style of retreat that we'll be doing in April is to include the talking lunch, we call it. And this is a break in the middle of the day from the otherwise full silent structure, where folks can, over the social ritual of eating, speak with each other, in a somewhat contained but also free way about how they're doing. Little check-ins happen here, conversations about aspects of practice, various conversations unfold here in a way that I think can be contained enough to not interrupt the stream of deepening in concentration and internality, but also provide some of this, what in polyvagal theory would be called ventral vagal or facial, frontal, social engagement that is so healthy. We make the talking lunch optional, so folks can always not talk, of course. And this April retreat will be, beautiful springtime. So we reserve just the inside of the dining yurt for the talking lunch. And anyone who wants to maintain the silence practice can just go outside. And it's been a beautiful practice to work on, building this one talking period in. And then, of course, a different aspect is the amount of chanting that we do, which I'll talk about in a second, also as a beautiful way to mobilize the voice and the ventral or social system. So the talking lunch is one piece that is different from other kinds of retreat. A second piece that's different is that in the morning session, so the period between breakfast and lunch, the long practice session in there is a guided but largely self-directing practice that uses aspects of yoga, physical yoga practices, hatha yoga practices, aspects of somatics and open movement practice, and aspects of mindfulness and Buddhist practice that we are basing the whole retreat in, to work with the body in a different way than just in sitting and walking, but also in a different way than just formal yoga asana, the way you might have learned it in a yoga class or studio. We work with a structure I call Hatha Yoga Sadhana, which is basically just a way of structuring your own practice that begins with aspects of warming up the body, liberating the joints, coming into mobility and breath and the sense of the whole body. So awakening proprioception, awakening interoception, we'll talk about those words as part of our study. And through this practice, coming into a tremendously important but rather subtle aspect of meditative cultivation. And that is the ability to sense very precisely, in a way, the subtle energies moving in the body, particularly energies that want to move through the musculature as movement impulse, and that if unrestrained come out as the hindrance of restlessness, or energies that can't find their movement, that when untended come out as the hindrance of dullness or sleepiness, sloth and torpor. We work with the bodily energies as a way to build up what are known as the jhana factors of aiming the attention and sustaining it, but also joy and rapture in the body, contentment in the body, and a kind of pervasive, full body presence that is energetically alive, that is alive with breath and fullness. So we do that practice in the mornings. And again, that's self-directed. Sometimes folks are very still and very, very close to the sitting practice. If the mind-body is very still, that works really well there. Other folks really take the opportunity to work through or massage out the various energies of the body in stronger asana practice, stronger breath practice. And in this sequence, we'll sometimes do some of the formal breath expansion practices known as pranayama. And the Hatha Yoga Sadhana sequence ends in a beautiful synthesis of mindfulness practice, relational practice, and subtle energy practice called the Open Circle. And this is a form that is a descendant of a body of work known as authentic movement that arose in the West out of feminist, Jungian, therapeutic, and dance-based discourse in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And it's been a very central and beautiful part of my own training. So we have this movement practice that is that's deeply contemplative, but also meets that part of the nervous system that can sometimes get stuck in just the instruction to just be still and just sit with everything. And these are, along with the talking lunch and the chanting and many other things we do, these are all different ways to say, don't get stuck. Don't get caught in like a whirlpool of hindrances, but that we have many, many tools to actually work through those without departing from the central theme of retreat practice, which is continuity of awareness. In the afternoon, there's an open period of practice where the encouragement is to sit in meditation, to do walking meditation, to move as needed, to rest as needed. And the practice here is really to cultivate discernment and to build up the skills of self-directed practice. That we don't always need a meditation to be guided. We don't need the bells to tell us, sit this long, walk this long, take a break now, don't take a break now. That stuff is all good training. But I very strongly believe that the Buddhist community in the West, the Insight community broadly, many different contemplative communities now, are training folks well enough that there's a kind of maturity present in the field. We can learn to practice fully on our own motivation. And I think something radical happens when you have to confront your own responsibility in your own practice, rather than even relying on, oh, the bell rang and so I do the discipline of going to sit, but really saying like, what exactly is the right practice for me in this moment? And falling in love with sitting as a beautiful expression of your discipline, rather than getting good at the discipline of sitting. So an open period of practice. Just before dinner, for the hour or so before dinner, at the end of that open period of practice, there's an optional gathering to meet with me for practice guidance. And this is something that I've been doing instead of the old one-on-one like retreat interview or conversation model. This is a way of saying that the energy of the group, again, helps people to do deeper work, and that we learn from hearing where other people are in their practice. And so this is more like what we would call satsang. Really sitting together, someone comes up and sits with me in front of the room. We do this not in the meditation hall, so if folks want to keep sitting, again, they can do that there. We do this up in a different loft space. And it's very sweet. People will come up, we'll talk about practice a little bit, we'll do little sessions that are sometimes a little therapeutic, sometimes a little magic, sometimes a little bit of philosophical inquiry happens, and it's been very beautiful to do that as well. The last thing I'll say about retreat is the depth of devotional practice that we build in. So morning and evening chanting, we do the Refuge and Precepts Puja that we do every week at the Tuesday satsang, but we also do a variety of other chants, mantras to evoke various energies that are important on the path, like compassion or emptiness, mantras, that are somewhat well known. Mantras like Om Mani Padme Hum and Gate Gate Paragate Parasangate Bodhi Swaha, the great mantra of the perfection of wisdom, and others, as a way to saturate the field in a kind of practice of devotion and an expression of our path, again, communally, together. And all of these things together make these retreats, for some people, feel more like a group experience than an individual one. For others, very much like an individual experience, but supported by the group field, differently than in a retreat style that emphasizes, full formal silence and non-contact of any kind, and private interviews, and emphasizes isolation, again, in ways that can be very beneficial in practice, but also can have their shadow. The last thing I'll say about this particular retreat in April is that we are using as the basis of practice there the practice of the full body breath, which is the standard way that I am suggesting folks work toward breath practice lately, or it's the style of breath practice that I love the most lately. So we'll be working with the full body breath, and then bridging or morphing or saturating that full body breath with the quality of loving kindness or love or friendliness. This is This is the radiating mettā or Brahmavihara practice. And I talk about that in a different video. But it's a beautiful practice. It's a not phrase-oriented practice, so it's really, the instruction becomes, and will become on this retreat, in the sense of continuity being the heart of practice, the instruction becomes maintaining the sense of full body presence, full cellular presence, with breath in every cell of the body and love radiating through every cell of the body through the whole day. That becomes the thread that guides you through. And so no matter what we're doing, sitting in meditation, chanting, formally invoking the qualities of love or kindness, moving the body, feeling the energies move and inviting stuck energies to resolve, speaking with each other, being in silence, walking in the woods, caring for the body, going to sleep, hearing a talk. Through all of those, the instruction will be to simply breathe into and sustain and nourish and expand the sense of the whole body as a field of presence, breath energy, and kindness, shining out in all directions. It's a lovely practice, and here's the pitch. There's a few spaces left. I would love for you to come and join us if you can take a few days off of your busy life to give to the growing of your heart in your own practice, and come and share in some community, some beautiful food in a beautiful place of practice together. So thanks for listening, and see you on retreat soon. Take good care.